Okay, for week one of the class, as with any other class, you are going to be setting up your routines. Now, in Reading Seminar, it's important that you set up some of the routines you'll carry out throughout the semester. Things like how you want to set up the independent reading time, what does it look like to track the books they're reading, how are you going to quickly check and assess that they're keeping up, what page they're reading. So this is the time where you set up those routines. So like with all the other weeks, we have some suggestions of how we've done it in the past and have found some success with it. But feel free to shuffle around, choose ideas that you think will work best, or you can just go in the order that we recommend them. As you can see over here, we've got ideas for each day, what you would do that first full week of class. So for day one, you really want to set up the whole purpose of the course, which is, what's in it for me? Pose the question to them, why am I learning how to read more often? What's the purpose in reading? And so you're just getting an overview of what the course will be like. On day two, that's when you're going to take your first trip to the library. Now, a lot of the library media specialists are excellent at offering advice, giving book talks. Some libraries, like I know the librarian at Santa Fe Trail, she has a scavenger hunt she has the kids do, or some sort of activity she has the kids do to learn about the library. So talk to your librarian, see if they have anything they would like to do to introduce the library to the students. You might have a few of your own book recommendations in there ready to go as well. But the important thing is every kid walks out of that library with a book that they choose. And it can be any book that they want to use, that they want to choose, but it is a book of their choice. That is the important thing. Later on, you might want to have recommendations of different genres or different things. But that first book really should be something that they choose on their own that they would like to read. Day three is where you're starting to set up things like status of the class, which you can see right here is there's a sheet for that. Basically what status of the class is, it's where you go around to each student and you just ask them, what page are you on and what book are you reading? And it's really a quick check. I usually, the first time I talk about a book with a kid, I write down the title, but after that I'm just writing down the page number. This is a great time to have that conversation. Oh, I noticed that you were on page 2 yesterday, you're on page 2 again today. What's going on with this book? Or you were on page 33 yesterday and now you're on page 195. Did you read a lot or were you skipping ahead? So this is a great opportunity to just check in and see where kids are at on their book. It's also a great way to see if they're reading at home and to help encourage that. The other thing you can do on day three is set up their interactive notebooks. With the iPads, we're going to have the opportunity to do some online notebooks with something like OneNote, Microsoft OneNote, or you can do the traditional spiral notebook. The reason why I like having a spiral notebook, or in this case a digital one if you want, is I have things that I want them to keep track of throughout the semester. One of them being what books that might interest them later on that they can write down. If another student talks about an interesting book, they just jot down the title in that section of their spiral. Things like the Reading Minute, which we'll go over at a later time, or anything like that. So if you look on day 3, there is some recommendations. There are some recommendations on what to put for day 3. On day 4, that's where, so they've got their books on Tuesday, or day 2, which might be a Tuesday. On day 4, they've had a chance to read their book. Now you want to talk to them about, well, why would I abandon a book, or why would I quit a book? The more examples you can use from your own life, the better. Kids love hearing about times when you've had trouble reading a book. I always share examples of when I gave up on a book because it was too boring. And it's okay to be honest with them and say, you know what, I started this book and it was the most boring book ever. Or I started this book and a bunch of my friends told me it was good, but the words were just too big. I wasn't interested in reading it because it was too difficult. So teach them when it's okay to abandon a book, but this goes back to the status of the class. Check in with them. If they're abandoning 3 books in a row, then there's something wrong with their book choices. Also talk to them about creating a book log. How you do that is up to you, but I like to keep track of what page did they start on during independent reading time and what page did they end on. Now, sometimes I do this for a grade, sometimes I don't. The more important thing is that they are thinking about what they're reading, how often they're reading, and logging that. The final thing we recommend on day 4 is doing a reading minute, an example of the reading minute. Now, the reading minute is just taking 1 minute of time, one small passage of something you read that you think is worth sharing. Okay, so you read that passage and explain to them why you chose that, why you thought that one passage was worth sharing, why you thought it was a great piece to share. Because eventually they're going to do their own reading minutes. Again, this isn't a required activity, but it's sometimes interesting to see what they think is worthwhile in what they're reading. Why the section they read was the greatest section that they've read in a while, or the greatest passage, or the greatest quote. On day 5, this is going to wrap up that first full week of class. And for day 5, that's going to be writing letters to the teacher. Now, for the video on writing letters, if you go over here to Other and then go down to Letters, there will be a video on how to do those letters. So check that out. See if the letters are something that would interest you. So that's really your first full week. That first full week, you are explaining to them what the purpose of the course is, which is what's in it for me, what are the purposes for reading, getting them a book from the library, introducing things like setting up their notebook, taking status of the class, teaching them how to give up on a book, teaching them how to fill out their book log. Okay, so you're just doing all of the standard stuff so that later on in the semester they know the routine. That status of the class, you should be able to get through it in 5 minutes during their independent reading time once they're used to it, because they get to the point where you don't even have to ask a question. You're walking by, they say 5, 22, 25. I finished my book and I'm starting this book. So it gets to be pretty quick. All right, so that is that first week of class.